borderline personality disorder, worldwide, an estimated 1.5 to 2.5% of the population is affected. Community-based studies suggest that diagnosis rates are only slightly higher in women than in men, while in clinical settings, women are diagnosed much more often. This may indicate that men are often underdiagnosed. The disorder usually begins in early adulthood and is considered one of the most burdensome mental health conditions for those affected and for the people around them. Borderline personality disorder is a condition where your emotions don't just arise, they overwhelm you. In the brain, systems involved in regulating emotions, impulses, and relationships may react more intensely and less steadily. The amygdala in particular often appears highly reactive and may evaluate stimuli more quickly as threatening or emotionally charged. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which normally helps regulate and slow things down, may work less consistently, especially under stress. The balance between emotion and control begins to shift. As a result, your internal system reacts more intensely to what is happening around you. Small triggers can feel like major threats, and emotions can shift quickly with full intensity. In everyday life, you experience closeness as intense and meaningful. But even small changes, a glance, a tone of voice, a delayed response, can suddenly feel like rejection. Your body reacts immediately. Your heart starts to race, tension rises, and your thoughts become more urgent and harder to control. So you move between extremes. In one moment, people can feel essential to you, and in the next, distant or even threatening. Your sense of self is often unstable as well. Who am I really, and what actually defines me? These are questions you sometimes ask yourself. Your sense of self can shift quickly depending on what happens in everyday life. To cope with this intensity, you may turn to impulsive behaviors and act suddenly because the inner pressure feels unbearable in the moment. Many people don't understand this unpredictability. They struggle with the strong reactions and abrupt shifts and say things like, "You're overreacting," or "Just get a grip." But they don't realize that your internal system is under constant high tension. Emotions don't arise quietly, they hit you like tsunami waves that pull you under. And you try to hold on to yourself and to the people around you who are being pulled under with you. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Worldwide, about 2 to 8% of the population is affected. The distribution between men and women is relatively balanced. The condition usually develops gradually over time and often goes unrecognized for a long time. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is not a condition that simply holds you back. It drives a strong need to keep everything under control. People with this condition often show rigid patterns of orderliness, perfectionism, and control. There is little flexibility for spontaneity, uncertainty, or deviation from rules. Mistakes or unclear situations can create immediate inner tension. Your internal system is geared toward getting everything right. Rules give you security, and structure gives you stability. In everyday life, this can show up as careful planning, repeated checking, and working on details until they seem perfect. Your body can reflect this tension. Your muscles remain tight, your thoughts circle around what is not yet right, and letting go becomes difficult. You set high standards for yourself and often for others as well. Tasks take longer because every detail has to be right, and decisions drag on because every option is considered thoroughly. Relationships are affected. You expect reliability, precision, and structure. Deviations are often hard for you to tolerate. To regulate this tension, you increase control even further. You structure and check more, and you hold on to rules even more rigidly. Many people see this as simple perfectionism. They say things like, "Just relax," or "It doesn't have to be perfect." But they don't realize that your internal system is constantly trying to avoid uncertainty. That control is not a source of satisfaction for you, but a way to maintain stability. It feels like you are constantly monitoring a complex system to keep everything in balance, so that the fragile structure doesn't suddenly collapse. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Worldwide, about 5% of children and around 2.5% of adults are affected. The diagnosis is made more often in boys, while in girls it is often recognized later or initially overlooked. The signs usually appear in childhood and can persist into adulthood. ADHD does not mean that attention is fundamentally absent. Rather, it is often harder to regulate and keep stable. In the brain, systems that control attention, impulse regulation, and motivation function in ways that differ from the norm. Neurotransmitters such as dopamine and norepinephrine play a central role because they influence what your attention focuses on and how well it can be maintained. In ADHD, this regulation is less consistent. Stimuli are weighted differently, attention shifts more quickly between inputs, and minor details can suddenly move to the foreground. At the same time, what matters most can more easily slip out of focus. This process shows up in everyday life. You start a task and your focus moves on. Your thoughts branch out and new impulses push themselves to the front. Your body responds with growing restlessness. You feel an almost automatic urge to move. Sitting still or staying with one thing takes noticeable effort. But you also have the ability to lose yourself in something that truly interests you. Time loses its meaning, and you can stay focused for hours. These shifts affect your entire life. It becomes difficult to maintain structure. Tasks remain unfinished even though you want to complete them. Decisions are often made spontaneously. To cope with this, you may react impulsively, avoid certain situations, or constantly seek new stimulation. Many people do not understand this dynamic. They only see restlessness, forgetfulness, or a lack of discipline. They say things like, just focus, or try harder. But they don't realize that your brain filters and prioritizes stimuli differently. That attention is not a switch you can simply turn on. It feels like trying to tune a radio station while an invisible force keeps shaking your hand. Schizophrenia. Worldwide, about 0.3 to 0.7% of the population is affected. The condition usually begins in late adolescence or early adulthood and tends to appear somewhat earlier in men than in women. It is one of the severe mental disorders with profound effects on perception, thinking, and behavior. Schizophrenia is not a split personality. It changes how your brain processes reality. In the brain, systems that organize perception, meaning, and associations fall out of balance. Neurotransmitters such as dopamine play an important role because they influence how stimuli are evaluated and how meaning is assigned. However, schizophrenia cannot be explained as a simple misweighting of stimuli. Multiple processes are affected, including perception, how the mind assigns meaning to experiences, thinking, and reality testing. As a result, your inner experience can change fundamentally. The brain begins to assign different meanings to stimuli and thoughts. Subtle impressions can suddenly feel overwhelmingly important. Associations arise that others cannot follow. The boundaries between inner experience and external reality can begin to blur. What you think can sometimes feel as if it is coming from outside. What happens outside can feel directly related to you. This process also appears in everyday life. Some people hear voices that are real to them. Others perceive things that no one else can see or hear. Thoughts can feel unfamiliar or difficult to organize. Conversations become harder to follow or structure. Actions may seem confusing or incomprehensible to others. Your connection to reality can be temporarily impaired. Your behavior and daily life also begin to change. Tension increases, withdrawal sets in, and even everyday tasks become progressively more difficult. Many people do not understand this condition. They only see unusual behavior or hear about voices and delusions. They say things like, "That's just in your head," or "That's not real." But they don't realize that your brain processes and evaluates signals differently. That your perception feels completely real to you. It feels like living in a parallel world that others cannot access, moving through it alone. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. Worldwide, an estimated 2 to 3% of the population is affected. The disorder often begins in adolescence or early adulthood, and frequently follows a chronic course. Men and women are affected at roughly equal rates. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a condition in which thoughts don't simply appear, they force their way in. In the brain, systems involved in evaluation, control, and safety operate in recurring loops. Certain networks responsible for detecting errors and monitoring actions remain active even when no real danger is present. Signals are not brought to a close but reinforced again and again. Your brain keeps telling you, something is wrong. Something still isn't safe. Something has to be checked. This process shows up in the form of intrusive thoughts that you have no control over. They feel alien, urgent, and almost impossible to push aside. Your body responds with restlessness. An inner pressure builds, and a strong sense of uncertainty begins to grow. To reduce this state, you start to act. You try to regain control and repeat actions over and over. More and more rituals begin to take shape, and they start to confine you. For a brief moment, there is relief. But it doesn't last long. The thoughts return, and the cycle starts again. These loops begin to shape your entire life. Many people don't understand this dynamic. They see only the compulsive behavior. They say things like, just stop doing it, or, that doesn't make any sense. But they don't recognize that your brain can't store safety, that the internal alarm is triggered again and again. It feels as if an inner alarm keeps going off, and no matter how hard you try, the button to switch it off doesn't work. Eating disorders. Worldwide, an estimated 8 to 10% of people are affected at some point in their lives. Women are affected more often, but men are increasingly affected as well, and often remain unrecognized. Eating disorders usually emerge during adolescence or early adulthood, and are among the mental health conditions associated with high physical and psychological strain. There are different forms: binge eating disorder, bulimia nervosa, and anorexia nervosa. Binge eating disorder involves repeated episodes of overeating, accompanied by a sense of losing control. Bulimia nervosa is marked by binge eating episodes followed by compensatory behaviors such as vomiting, fasting, or excessive exercise. Anorexia nervosa is associated with an intense fear of gaining weight, a severely restricted food intake, and often a distorted body image. Eating disorders are not merely disorders of eating behavior. They change the way you experience your body, control, and your own sense of worth. Through the interaction of biological, psychological, and social processes, your internal system begins to lose its balance. It regulates hunger, reward, and self-perception. Messengers such as dopamine and serotonin influence these processes, while the perception of your own body begins to shift. You begin to link food with control, safety, or tension. Hunger is ignored or perceived more intensely, and satiety loses its clear sense of direction. This process becomes visible in everyday life. Your thoughts revolve around food, weight, or your body. You control, avoid, or temporarily lose control over your food intake. Out of this, rigid patterns of rules often begin to develop. Your body suffers as a result. It can no longer provide energy reliably, concentration and performance decline, and you gradually lose the ability to feel your body's signals clearly. Your self-image changes as well. You see yourself differently from the way others see you, and you start to base your self-worth on your body or your behavior. This dynamic shapes your entire life. Everyday life, relationships, and thoughts become organized around it. So much revolves around control or the attempt to regain it. Many people don't understand this illness. They say things like, just eat normally, or that's not healthy, but they don't realize that this is about far more than food, that your internal system is trying to create control, safety, or relief. It feels as if you're trying to bring order to something inside you that is being thrown into chaos again and again by a force you cannot control.